Hello.
Happy Thursday, Joy.
Happy Thursday, Brandon. And everyone else, too. You can also have a happy Thursday if you so choose.
They probably all waved too, but they had their video off, so we couldn't see it.
I have my video off because I am trying to wolf down my lunch. So I will do that now. I do have like a couple of minor updates for you guys today, too, of a administrativia
The pause
level.
followed by now remind me of the sunscreen song back in the day. It was just like, ladies and gentlemen of the class, whatever, wear sunscreen.
Oh,
And
yeah,
when I
I
got to the
love
point, I
that
was like,
song.
I'll dispense that advice now. And kind of the song.
They did that at graduation. It was the graduation song, right? Ladies and
Yeah,
gentlemen.
I think it came out around or after I graduated. And so I think everybody else might have started adding it to theirs later on. But it was just a regular song when I was growing up. All right, got both mics here. Got a good team going. Um, Rom, a few weeks back, you mentioned you wanted to demo your stacker and some other stuff. Is that still something you wanted to show off today?
Yes, give me a few minutes. Let's go
Oh,
through the other issues and then I'll just jump in.
okay. Yeah, we can circle back to that. I got a few PRs sitting out there ready to review. One of them I think I can merge right now because we only need one reviewer on the conformance repo. And we already got one review on their conformance repo. So I can almost certainly merge it, but I figure I'll go ahead and throw it up here real quick for anybody that wants to give a thumbs up, thumbs down to that one. And I think Tianon, you're probably a maintainer over there if you wanted to give it a second look. It's super simple, just updating the X crypto. And my whole big long comment in there is just saying, I ran the scan against this. Go Check said that, yeah, we should update it, but we're not actually vulnerable. It's the code path is never actually called in our implementation of it. The other one, since we got Mike here, is distribution spec. That one's been bouncing around a whole bunch for a long, long while. We got it narrowed down to some very, very narrow language there, I think that most people can agree with. And so if you got a chance to take a quick look at that and give it a thumbs up, that would be awesome.
Taking a look right now.
Thank you. All right. So those are the two easy, quick things. I did want to comment on another thing here, and hey, even Sajay's shown up, so get some of the good feedback here. I was back and forth with some of the build kit maintainers this past week, and I kind of wanted to throw this out as something that's been brewing around a little bit, but they've got their pull 5573 over on build kit, and I've linked it over in the agenda doc as well. They are starting to add a subject to their manifest, but they don't have the fallback support for it. And so I just kind of gave them a comment of, hey, just FYI, registries are expecting this. I saw Dianon jumped in there and said, hey, maybe it shouldn't be a mandatory. Maybe we should make this optional. And the thought process for us saying that clients must push the fallback was kind of a twofold. One was that there's no way to discover it on a registry if the client doesn't do the fallback, but Docker's using their own discovery, so I think we'll go ahead and make that a pass for now. The other was that on upgrading a registry that doesn't have referrer support, when you add referrer support to the registry, we were telling large registries, Docker Hub, Azure, ECR, all the big players out there, that when you go back and rescan the manifest to populate that referrer's response, that you only have to scan the manifests that have that fallback tag on there. You don't have to scan your entire repository. In other words, you can look through the repos. Does the fallback tag exist in any of these repos? If so, let me scan just the manifests that are referenced by that. And it would make the conversion process a lot faster for the very large registries. And it sounds like Docker Hub may not really care about that. I don't know the full story there, but I wanted to raise up to the group. Does it make sense to still have that requirement, or do we want to make that a loose requirement and say that registries, maybe the clients don't have to be so well behaved on the client side, but maybe the registries need to be more proactive and scan every manifest, not just the tag manifest. And it's not that they have to scan just tag manifest, but that they can speed up their conversion if they wanted to. Comes down to some of that must language. I think there's concerns that maybe clients shouldn't have that must language on their side. And if we take the must language away from the client, then we move the must from the client to the server at that point, because then the servers must scan everything. Otherwise, you have data loss. And I mean, the third option is you just allow data loss, but I'm trying to avoid that scenario. Dion's being very quiet over there.
I can't speak for the Docker Hub team, but I don't believe they're scanning the tags at all. I don't think they care about the tags one bit.
But are they, I mean, have they planned the conversion at all yet? I think right now they're just supporting the fallback if it exists. Not explicitly, but just by default.
I believe there has been work done to support referrers, and none of it relied on the fallback tags at all.
Okay. So for Hub, doesn't matter.
Because I think the rationale there is that we can't rely on the fallback tags because this is probably me projecting a little bit. Let me preface this. I'm projecting here, but I don't think that a registry can reasonably rely on the fallback tags because that relies on the assumption of well-behaved clients pushing the fallback tags. And I don't think that's a reasonable assumption, especially because the user experience of the fallback tags is so poor that users like me are absolutely patching that behavior out completely because the fallback tags are so dang ugly.
Yeah, I've been going the other direction. I've been patching out the Docker build kit behavior and putting back the fallback tags. We're just like writing tools to override each other. We'll just have fun going that direction. How about other big registry operators out there? ECR, ACR, any thoughts from that side?
I haven't gone back and checked if we actually have fallback tags for ACR usage wise. I need to check with engineering on that. But given that we came early with the referrer support, so at the same time as ECR, so I wasn't sure how much of a value that we didn't have that challenge. So I'm not able to represent that.
If you've already made the transition and refers is already supported, then I think this is a non-issue for you. And you could say, if clients aren't well behaved, doesn't matter because we're already supporting the API now.
Yeah. I think that's the position we're in. I would say, from my point of view, not really ECR's point of view, but from my point of view, whatever gets registries to supporting the referrers API, like I'm much more interested in new images and referring artifacts being supported than I am making sure that older images, work in some way. I think having to repush images would be a fine approach also. So
Just requires end users having the content to push or knowing where to get that content to repush.
but I think a lot of people don't care about older images. Like, I think it would be totally reasonable to say we're going to do this for new stuff and just not worry about making sure the older stuff works. It's not a problem we have, but
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of new content on new pushes. I'm just reading Sajay's comment there. I'm thinking along the lines of people that might be scanning old stuff might want to be able to go back and say, hey, let me go pull this old SBOM so that I can generate a new security report for that old image. And maybe they care about it, maybe they don't. I can't say one way or another myself.
I was a little bit zoned out, I'll admit. We're talking about the build kit PR?
Yeah. The stance from
there-
build kit is they don't want to, they're not excited about the must language in the spec, and so the thought process to change the language in the spec from clients must to more than likely changing it to servers must rescan every manifest.
What if we
Okay.
split the baby a little bit? Just get out the saw and cut it in half. Sorry, that's a little gruesome.
Dion, are you a parent?
I have 4 kids, yes. Yep. So here's my thought. What if we change the language to say that essentially clients should push the fallback tags and registries are only required to re-index content if there's a fallback tag. Basically, putting the choice on the registry whether or not they want to scan everything or trust sane clients, and putting the choice on the clients as to whether if they care about the data, they should push a fallback tag.
So
Somewhere in the middle where
neither has
clients
a
are
must.
suggested to put a fallback tag and registries are allowed to only re-index content if it's in a fallback tag, so that both can go either direction and it's mostly okay, and any data loss was a choice by one party or the other.
I mean, data loss would be a choice by both parties to not do the should at that point.
But if it's a should on the client, how can you force it as to a must on the server? The client will fail. That doesn't mean.
So the idea is that if it was a should on the client and then it's currently a should on the server, well, it's currently a may on the server, I think.
Right.
I have to look.
It just means, to me, in my view, it just means the client's going to fail, and that's fine in some cases, right?
So the client won't fail. It's always going to be data loss is the problem. If the client pushes content without the fallback tag, it wouldn't be discoverable. And when the registry upgrades, the data just wouldn't be there under the refers API. It wouldn't be discovered at all. And so the idea of putting a must on one side or the other was that we were trying to avoid data loss.
Yeah.
And so Tion's taking the third view. I was kind of hinting at earlier, but are we okay with data loss?
I'm going to be looking for a way to figure out there's data loss on the client.
Yeah.
Just saying.
From my side, I'd try to avoid it as best as possible, but it can happen, and so I try to not make it happen when possible.
Yeah. Problem is there's an expectation it's going to work the same on all clients in a cloud. If the cloud's using the client API to get the pull. So
Yeah.
I need to make sure that you get the same result both ways, if at all possible.
Ideally, everybody's upgrades has the refers API support, and we don't even have to talk about this anymore. That
There you
solves all
go.
problems.
Sure.
So it solves every problem except for Sajay's camera. I don't know what happened to it.
Yeah.
All right. I'll leave that one there. We'll circle back if we can find a nice happy medium that everybody likes. I think everybody is at different points of not liking certain parts of that. Hey, camera's better, Sajay. Next one on the agenda was Zoom is always doing its thing. I can't even share screens anymore because Zoom is doing its thing. Mixing and matching digest types. This one came out a long time ago, and I just happened to look at it because of stuff we were doing lately. And I don't know if we need to put some official phrasing in the spec or not, but I wanted to make sure everybody was comfortable with the idea that we do assume that you might have multiple digest algorithms within the same manifest. And if so, would you like a PR to state that specifically?
What did we agree on in are mixing and matching allowed or not? So you could have multiple layers, each layer has its own.
My take is yes, you can.
Okay, that makes sense to me as well.
Okay. Yeah, if others feel otherwise, this would be a great opportunity to say, no, we must always use the same digest algorithm within the same manifest. Wouldn't apply to the same repository. You can always have multiple things in the same repository at that point, unless you really want to get strict.
Is there an actual use case for this? When a manifest would mix digest?
Today, no. Tomorrow, maybe.
Yeah, today we don't have more than one digest type in actual usage. Even though SHA 512 is supposed to be supported, support for it is mixed.
So SHA 512 is specifically called out in the spec of saying this is a registered type, but is also listed as tools may support that digest algorithm. It doesn't say tools must support that algorithm, which makes it even all the more difficult to implement when we don't say everybody must support that. But assuming that people do want to support this, Blake 3, any other algorithm out there, this one was in there saying, what happens if someone decides to mix and match?
And the use case for mixing and matching is I pulled a base image that already uses one digest type, and I don't want to redigest all the layers because that has a whole bunch of follow-on effects that are, let's say, unpleasant.
Yeah, that was one of them for me. Another one I put in my list there was that you might have an index that has a nice fallback support. So maybe you implement Blake 3, but you also have SHA 512 as the first default. And so anybody that doesn't know about Blake 3 would just use the original default that everybody always knows, or SHA 256, sorry. And so you could assemble multiple things in there. And let's see, you might have different tools building different platforms. And so one tool might be upgraded, the other tool might not be upgraded yet. So you might be assembling that way. And then artifacts themselves was another one of the things I was thinking of, which was that you might have different content that might have value to be digested different ways within a single artifact. Maybe certain things perform better when you have a very large blob for, say, ML, and you want to have some kind of random access in there, but for all the other stuff, you want it to be the simple SHA 256 for whatever reason you've got for that. We've also got the empty descriptor hard code to a specific digest algorithm. So that was another one that kind of came to mind, was if you have the empty descriptor in there for the config, you might want to keep that with the 256 value just because everybody else is using that, but upgrade all your other algorithms to something else within your artifact. So I saw a bunch of reasons that it would make sense. The layers was the obvious one, though.
Yeah, and don't forget the most important one, that the registry operators want to do as little work as possible and push the intelligence to the clients.
Yeah, the big thing with the layers, though, for me, was registry operators want to deduplicate all those blobs as best as possible. And if you rehash the same layer with a different algorithm, that implies that you might not have that content deduplicate anymore if they go into separate blob stores for the separate algorithms. Not for certain, but potentially, depending on the implementation.
And the new digest algorithm that we are really interested in is Blake 3. That's really, I think, where we want to go because it's very fast.
Long term, we'll hopefully get there. So I hear everybody kind of nodding along that we probably want to support this. Do we need to say something in the spec? Does it make sense if I throw a PR out there to support that? Or to clarify that we do support that? Everybody's silent, and I think, Rom, everybody wants to see your demo. That's all they care about.
Okay.
All right.
Fingers
One
crossed.
more thing before you jump on your demo, and then we'll jump to that real quick. Which was that we had a question a while back that this is your like 2-minute warning there, Rom, because this one shouldn't take too long. We had a question way back from Steve-O saying, hey, should we declare what versions of Go are supported, how far back we go in our support? And I think the agreement, Diana, I saw you kind of nodding along with this one, was that we're going to be very conservative on what we support. And so if we don't have a reason to upgrade Go versions in the spec, we're just going to leave it at whatever version it is indefinitely. But I'm wondering if we want to call out somewhere in a developer node maintainer guide somewhere in there that just says we need to be supporting users for at least this many Go releases. And if we put that verbiage in there, what I'm curious to hear from the group is how many releases is this many Go releases that we want to support? Officially, the Go implementers only support 2 releases. Do we want to go back farther than that for people that are importing the spec?
I think a comment in go.mod is probably the right place to document that, because that's the place where we document the version we do support, and the place where we might actually read the note when we go to update the version we support. My own opinion would be that we should, at a minimum, support the versions that Go does, but one more seems pretty reasonable. And that's all assuming we had a compelling reason for upgrading that, like, say, we wanted to create some API that uses iterators or something and didn't want to do it in a backwards compatible way.
Yeah. So assuming we want to upgrade with a new feature, we have to wait until at least X number of releases are out before we make that change.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. But also, I don't think we want to significantly extend the amount of Go code we're maintaining and supporting either. So like we have a pile of structs, and I don't see Go making any dramatic changes to the way structs are defined such that we might want to bump the minimum version.
The most I could see is if we start doing conformance test and we don't want to maintain a separate Go mod file for just the conformance test.
Well, this gets into the library versus binary debate. And go.mod is designed to be a single solution for both, but you have to use it differently in each case. So like for things that are a binary, Dependabot is totally fine. For things that are a library, Dependabot is hostile to the entire ecosystem and totally misses the point of minimal version selection that Russ Cox designed GoMod's version selection around.
I've been very busy today running around repos, updating for the Go bug for things that don't actually experience the Go bug.
Yep. So my own take on that would be, no, the conformance test should have their own go.mod, and it can be as progressive in supporting Go versions as it wants to. If it wants to only support the latest, have at it. Seems fine
Yeah.
because it's a binary ultimately.
The downside of that is, at least in the past, I think they might have gotten better more recently, but I've had challenges with tooling if you have the Go mod file somewhere other than the top level of the repo. Doesn't mean Go doesn't work, but I think it was Go Please and some other tools around there were having challenges. All right. I think I deleted for enough. I'll take that note. I don't know if I necessarily want to put it in the Go mod file itself, just because I don't know how people read that versus a markdown file. And usually for me, the Go mod file is managed by automation. So I worry that A, would the automation mess up the Go mod file, and B, would anybody read it if they're just updating it using automation? But we can chat about that in the issue. All right. Ram, let me go ahead and put you up and you can show off all your fun, cool stuff.
Okay, can you guys see this?
Yep. You might want to bump the font a few.
Okay, yeah, let me do that. Better?
Yeah, that looks good.
Yeah, so this is, I think this is just an addendum to some of the ideas that I've been discussing in the past meetings. This is that maybe we should start looking at moving away from, okay, not moving away from, that's unrealistic, but at least give an option of packaging our layers apart from tar.gz things, right? So the two formats that I think I've talked about in the past is SquashFS and HeroFS layers. So they're full file systems, they're mountable, they are OverlayFS compatible and all of that good stuff. And the other thing is the since they are full file systems, nothing fancy needs to happen, right? So they just you don't need a fuse daemon, which is essentially emulating a TarFS in the back end and all of that stuff. So the deployment model becomes far simpler. Not only that, if you have layers containing very large entries, right? For example, like your AI models, or maybe even images which are very large, maybe Java, jars, and all of that stuff. So then, in that case, all the Sochi stuff may not be that useful because they're extremely sparse in terms of entries. So I'll just give a demo on what the steps are. The eventual goal, at least for me, is to get it to a point where I can create a containerd snapshotter so that containerd can do a lot of this stuff. But I'm not there yet, so I'll just break this down into baby steps, right? So the first one is, so what I have done here is to, the first question to ask is how do we actually generate these kinds of layers, the first one. And the second one is what do we do in terms of the deployment of these layers, right? So the first step is, in order to just demonstrate this, what I've done is clone the doc, one of our favorite repositories in the container world, which is Alpine. And what happens in Alpine is, this is the repository, I believe, is where these all the Alpine images get created out of. So there is a Docker file like so, whatever, right? So maybe that's what it is. So I'll just this is a demo. I'm not going into a whole lot of detail. So just giving in a Docker file, what I can do is I have this tool called Stacker, which is now a CNCF sandbox project. What it can do is it can actually consume the Docker file, and it does its own internal things. And once that is done, then, which is right over here, and then the second step is basically go ahead and build these layers, right? So I've done the first step. So what it does is, so if you have a Docker file like so, it will create a Stacker file like so. So let's take a look. So this is imperative, right? So this makes it declarative. So the idea here is Stacker is declarative, so it needs to know what you're going to tag it with. So that's why I put a substitute variable here, which is, it's just a template variable where I can sort of make it substitute it like that. Then it does a bunch of all this gets converted into stacker language. Not that important at this point, but good to know that this is what happens. And then what we do is we go ahead and let's go ahead and build this. So when you build it like this, let me call it like this, right? So the one change I made this for the stacker is I've added the support for EroFS as well. So it will generate. It was built originally to create OCI images natively, but now there is support for creating EroFS and SquashFS layers. So let's see if this works, right? So okay, so what it does is it creates an OCI layout, and we have the first image, which is just a tar.gz, the classical image. Then we have an EroFS image and we have a SquashFS image. So let's take a look at the let's take a look at what this manifest looks like, right? So so it has created an EroFS. So all of these blobs, just like as usual. So this will have exactly the same thing, same kind of entries, even in the tar.gz layer, except that now I am creating EroFS with whatever the compression is. Internally, I'm using the EroFS utils that the EroFS community has put out, and the currently supported compression algorithms are LZ4HC. That's what they recommend as the default. That's why I put it there. But ZSTD is coming in as an experimental patch. So in the future versions, I think we can pull that in. The second thing that is still pending is that the parallel builds are, it's still an experimental feature. So it's a single threaded implementation for this. So once that gets pulled in, then this will become fast as well, like the image generation. And that is important when we have really large images, right? So this is what it is, right? So next thing, and what Stacker will also do is, since these are actual file systems, it's also going to do the DM verity on it. So there is a DM verity hash that it actually adds a DM verity hash at the end, right? So that way you're basically able to compare. Let's also take a look at the SquashFS layers. So the SquashFS layers, ZSTD is supported, so you can basically just use that. So the difference between SquashFS and EroFS is SquashFS is much older, which means that there is wide support, including Microsoft Windows and BSD and all of that stuff. So that would be a reason why you would pick SquashFS. And EroFS is fairly new, so the support is only on Linux, but that community is much more active right now, right? So this is the thing, right? So now, so this is the image generation part. Now let's take a look at the second part where the containerd will come in and as a snapshotter. So what containerd will do is it just goes through its diff chain and basically keeps applying them one over the other, and then the overlay FS will make a union FS out of it, right? So the way that you do that is you do that. So AtomFS is currently a binary that does that step. I plan to make that as a library for containerd, the snapshot. So when you do this, what it is doing is take the image that is in the OCI layout and what that the image name is, and then basically mount that into rootfs, EroFS. That's a directory on which you want to mount. And when that happens, it makes sure of the layering order. It also makes sure that the DM verity is checked and all of that stuff. So now if you take a look at the, sorry. Where is it mounted? Okay. Where did I mount it? Okay, let me see. Yeah, it's a bunch of stuff. So it has basically gone ahead and mounted a bunch of things, right? So now let's take a look at the second step, which is, so the mounting part is done. Now it is the creation of the containers based on this, right? So I'm going to use LXC. as my container driver. And there you go. So we have things like APK and all that stuff running, right? So this is it. So now you have a container running there, and you can pretty much launch anything. So this is basically the end-to-end demo of what you can do with starting from a Docker file, going to ERFS or SquashFS layers, and actually launch the containers out of this. So now, what is the real application is? Let's take a look at this. So let's start with a Docker file that looks like this, right? So which is we are going to create this is a multi-step Docker file. So the first part is we create a large artifact. I'm just going to simulate this, right? So it's going to be a very large model that gets packaged here like so. And I just created 10 MB, it could be, realistically, it should be around 200 gigs, right? So it can be really large model. And the second step is I'm going to use this model, and I'm just giving a particular command here, which is just doing nothing, right? Basically, that's it can be anything. It's basically an inferencing code or whatever you want to do here. So this is the typical use case, and this particular part can be replaced with your Kubernetes kept, which is at OCI volume and things like that, right? So, but even so, the whole story about this mount and all those things are still relevant. So if you did the, let's say, if you did the build, let's call it. Give me 1 second. So I will do the build part of this. So it's I did the convert, and then it does the build, and I'm also saying that build both ERFS and SquashFS layers, right? So this is what happens, and then let's say I'm going to deploy the model here, and then I'm going to say like so, and this is it. So this is, and there's your model right there, package like that. And as you can see that the whole, so from the build, I basically can just do the mount and then the run. So that is extremely fast, right? So now if I can scale this to from 10 meg, it goes to 200 gig or more. It'll pretty much do the same thing. Of course, the DM Verity hash lookup, the hash verification is that will be the that's going to be off the size of the image, but fundamentally that's also fast. So this basically makes this whole experience very, very fast. So that is the pitch. And you basically, once you're done, you basically unmount it and you're done. Right, and there's the unmount, and that's it. So this is the, so if we allow for file system based layers, then this is the sort of the experience that you get end to end. So next steps, I think, is just to write the containerd snapshotter, and at which point I think people can play with it in the containerd ecosystem. So that's all I had. And yeah, one more thing that I wanted to add is, yes, so we have ERFS and SquashFS. Tomorrow you can add whatever you want. If Windows has its own specific file system that it wants to build like this, just add it there, maybe Butterfs and things like that, right? So things of that nature. So there is this, it opens the doors for several possibilities. Okay, end of demo. Questions?
I'm curious where the speed ups come from with this model. Is it going to be that we're seeing a speed up because overlay is slower than something like this just at the kernel implementation level? Are we seeing speed ups because we're going to get maybe a block level lazy loader?
It's a block. It's a block level loader, right? So that's why we're getting the speed. So if you get a tar.gz, so let's say the tar.gz, the problem is, first of all, it's not a file system. It has its own long list of issues. That's Alexei has actually documented that, right? So you can take a look at that one. The second thing is you have to unpack it. So as the image size becomes really large, then you pay the cost of unpacking. Whereas here you don't. You just mount it, and as the files get accessed, internally the kernel will do its things.
Oh, that makes sense to me. I think the thing that would be interesting to see is user space tooling to work with those layers. Just 'cause I know
Yes, and the
there are
user
tools
space.
out there now. Go ahead.
Yeah, so there isn't anything that is doing this right now. So Stacker is one of them, but I don't expect that to, if this sees adoption, that will not be the only tool. Okay, and the other
But-
thing is the deployment is where I'm looking at the container snapshot. Right, give me, I think maybe in a week or so I should have it ready. I sort of got my head around how the whole thing works. How the unpacker and the snapshotter and all of those things work. So let me see if we can pull that off. Maybe in the next week, I can give another demo.
Is Stacker doing it in user space? Is it relying on the
User
kernel to implement the
space.
file system, or
User
is
space.
it
User space? So it's
Okay.
internal. So at the end of the day, it has to be repeatable and all of that stuff, right? So similar to Docker, Stacker uses LXC as its to do its builds inside the namespaces, right? So and that's basically user namespaces. So it doesn't really need root privileges. So yes, it is a user space tool.
Okay. Does it require Seago still?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, yes.
Why don't any of these tools have support without Seago? Keep waiting for like Sochi and some of these other ones to drop the Seago dependency.
Dropping Cgo means replacing it with native Go with something else. So that's I think it's hard, at least in Stacker.
We've got developers. We can write this stuff.
We can, yes. Okay. I'm happy this didn't blow up in my face, but here you go.
Thanks, Rob. I was saving the end meeting for Jory, but she had to run off. So she did drop some notes in the chat there. Mentioned that the trademark board is doing their voting and that they've got some money set aside for this year if we need some development work. And also apparently the container plumbing event was over budget, so they're thinking about doing a mini summit at Open Source Summit North America, which I think we've done one of those before, similar to how we did at KubeCon. And I'm comfortable with either of those. Whatever makes sense, whatever they got budget for. I'm not going to make it in person, any of these things, though, so it's going to be either me attending from remote or just checking out the recording later on.
Open Source Summit is where is it this year? Next year?
Do not know.
How'd you all blow the
Denver.
budget for container plumbing? I missed that one.
I'm kind of surprised. The thing I liked about container plumbing before was that it was an all virtual event, and then they went back to in person. I'm like, shucks, I was enjoying it when it was all virtual. I could jump in those easily.
I know, right? That was fun.
But yeah, they are in Denver, June 23rd to 25th. And then I'm guessing they'll probably do another one of those at KubeCon as well. For those that were in person at KubeCon this past year, how was that little mini meeting for you?
Not bad. I don't know if we took a whole lot. Did we take actions and are we going to follow?
I think it was mostly runtime maintainers. So I was just trying to kind of leave the space for them to have their discussions and sort out some of their challenges.
Have a good vacation, Tina.
Tiana is going to be out, and that is a good call that we should probably check calendars here for how many more meetings we're going to have. I'll still be here next week if folks want to meet then. But then I'm
Excellent.
guessing that the day after Christmas and January 2nd, there might be a lot of people out. So if folks want to skip those 2 meetings and then reconvene on the 9th, I'd be fine with that. But I'm still planning on being here on the 19th if folks want to chat then.
Should be around.
All right, so I will follow up with Jory on got kind of the quiet nods that we always get for these things. No chaos, just people confused at how we went over budget with container plumbing because we always figured that was a little cheap event. Maybe we get them to go back virtual. That would be fun. Because I would submit again if they go back virtual. All right. Anything else? Last few minutes here. I did throw on the agenda. Run C had version 1.2.3 release this past week. Just, you know, huzzah, da-da. Good job.
Yep, we're rolling it across container D releases.
I like when the
and backwards.
I like when the version numbers are sequential. 1.2.3. We just had Go 1.23.4.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
We don't have many of these. They're all sequential, so it's kind of fun.
Yep.
All right. Well, everything I was trying to get merged got merged. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Tina. Thank you, everybody. And yeah, Tina, have a good rest of your year and a good holiday. I will see the rest of the group here next week that wants to show up. And if you don't want to show up, I won't take offense. And have a good weekend.
Take care, Brandon. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.